The wind doesn't just howl during a blizzard, it whispers names. It creeps through cracks, slides under doors, and wraps itself around buildings like something alive, something searching. Snow doesn't fall gently in these storms. It attacks, blinding the eyes, erasing roads, swallowing sound, and turning the familiar world into a white void where direction loses meaning. Tonight's stories are not myths passed around campfires or nightmares pulled from imagination. They are chilling, true blizzard horrors. Moments when ordinary people were forced to face the most ancient fear of all, being small, alone, and helpless against something far greater than themselves. But hidden beneath the ice and terror are lessons carved in frost. Lessons about courage, patience, faith, and the quiet strength that only reveals itself when everything else is stripped away. In a blizzard, survival begins long before the body fails. It begins in the mind. Cold does not kill instantly. Fear does its work first. It whispers that you are running out of time, that no one is coming, that every decision you make will be the wrong one. Panic urges you to move, to flee, to do something, anything, to escape the crushing stillness. And yet, the people who survive are often the ones who resist that urge, who understand that clear thought is the first fire you must protect. There was a man driving home late through a mountain pass, a route he had taken 100 times before. The forecast had promised light snow, nothing more. But mountains have their own plans. Within minutes, flakes thickened into walls, headlights reflected back into his eyes, and the road vanished beneath drifting white. Wind slammed into the car so hard it rocked on its suspension. Then came the slide. Tires lost their grip. The car spun once, twice, and slammed into a snowbank with a dull, final thud. The engine coughed and died. When he opened the door, the cold punched the breath from his lungs, sharp and violent, like inhaling knives. The world beyond the car was nothing but chaos, snow, racing sideways, sound swallowed, distance erased. At first, he shouted. His voice vanished instantly. He cursed, hit the steering wheel, checked his phone again and again as the battery bled away in the cold. He thought about walking, about leaving the car behind, and trying to follow what he believed was the direction of the road. But fear twisted that thought into desperation. His hands shook so badly he could barely zip his jacket. Then, through the panic, a memory surfaced, his father's voice from years ago. Calm and steady, saying that rushing in a crisis is how people die. So the man forced himself to stop. He sat back, closed his eyes, and counted his breaths until the shaking slowed. He took stock fuel in the tank, extra clothes in the trunk, a lighter. Time if he used it wisely. He ran the engine only in short bursts to conserve fuel, wrapped himself in layers, and turned the car into a shelter instead of a prison. To keep his mind from spiraling, he replayed memories, said prayers out loud, even laughed weakly at himself just to hear a human sound. The storm battered the car for hours, burying it deeper, trying to convince him that he was already gone. But he refused to let fear decide his fate. When rescuers finally found him the next morning, the car was nearly invisible beneath snow. One of them said quietly that most people in that situation panic and walk until the cold takes them. He survived because he conquered his thoughts before the storm conquered his body. Isolation is another killer that arrives quietly in blizzards. Snow doesn't just block roads, it cuts lifelines. There was an elderly woman living alone on a remote farm when a sudden winter storm rolled in without warning. Power lines fell under the weight of ice. Roads disappeared under drifts taller than fences. Her phone went silent. The house creaked and groaned as if protesting the cold pressing in from every side. At night, darkness felt heavier than the snow. With no television, no radio, and no human voice, the silence became suffocating. She began talking to herself. Not out of madness, but survival. She described what she was doing, narrated memories, prayed aloud, just to fill the emptiness. She burned furniture piece by piece to keep warm, rationed food carefully, and stared out frosted windows each morning hoping to see movement. Days passed slowly, each one testing her resolve. What kept her alive was not strength of body, but the refusal to believe she had been forgotten. When help finally arrived, she cried not from pain, but from relief at hearing another voice. Her story teaches that isolation can be deadly, and that reaching out, checking on others, and valuing connection before disaster strikes can mean the difference between life and death. Hope can feel fragile in a blizzard, but sometimes it becomes the strongest force of all. During a historic snowstorm in Scandinavia, A group of hikers were forced into an emergency shelter as winds screamed outside like something enraged. Snow buried the door, supplies dwindled. Each night, fear crept closer as the cold gnawed at their resolve. One woman, quiet and unassuming, began to sing softly after sunset. Not loudly enough to waste energy, not cheerfully enough to feel fake, but gently, consistently. At first, it felt strange. Then it became expected. That song marked time, reminded them that warmth once existed and would exist again. It gave rhythm to waiting. When rescuers finally dug them out days later, several of them said they were close to giving up, close to surrendering to sleep and cold. That song kept them awake, kept them human. Hope does not always roar. Sometimes it hums quietly in the dark, refusing to go silent. Nature does not care about confidence. It demands respect. In northern communities, there is a tale told about a hunter who mocked winter warnings and traveled alone during a whiteout, boasting that he knew the land better than anyone. He never returned. Some say his lantern still appears during storms, bobbing at the edge of visibility, luring the careless into danger while warning the wise to turn back. Whether folklore or truth, the lesson remains. Arrogance has no place in the face of forces greater than us. In life, storms come that cannot be outmatched by willpower alone. Respecting limits is not weakness, it is wisdom. Preparation is often invisible until it saves your life. Two friends once set out on snowmobiles under a clear sky, laughing at the idea of carrying emergency gear. One of them insisted, packing extra fuel, food, and a thermal blanket despite the teasing. When a sudden blizzard swept in, visibility dropped to nothing, and they were forced to stop. Cold crept in fast. The difference between them became painfully clear. One had resources. One had hope alone. They survived because one person had chosen preparation over pride. In life, planning for hardship is an act of love for the person you will be when things go wrong. Help does not always come in expected forms. In a story from rural Russia, a traveler lost in a blizzard followed tracks he believed belonged to an animal, too exhausted to think clearly. Those tracks led him to a small village hidden by trees and snowdrifts. The villagers took him in, fed him, warmed him, and saved his life. Sometimes guidance arrives disguised, and survival requires humility enough to follow it. Endurance is not built in grand moments, but in fragments of time. A school bus once became trapped overnight in a violent snowstorm. Children huddled inside as the temperature dropped. Fear spread quickly. The driver, knowing panic could be fatal, broke time into minutes instead of hours. He told stories, asked questions, kept them awake, reminded them that surviving the next 5 minutes was enough. By morning, rescue crews arrived to find frightened but living children. Life works the same way. You don't survive overwhelming hardship by defeating it all at once, but by staying present in the moment you are in. After the storm passes, something changes. Survivors of blizzard horrors often speak of gratitude that feels sharper, deeper. Warmth is no longer ordinary. Food tastes richer. Human voices sound like miracles. Fear strips life down to essentials and reminds us what truly matters. It means you are human standing at the edge of something difficult. And may you emerge from every blizzard, not just alive, but changed, carrying a deeper gratitude for life, for love, and for the fragile, beautiful warmth of being here.